My name is Kyrylo. I'm from Kiev originally. Got my master's here, so good to be back home. I've been working in outsourcing for a couple of years, got bored, so went on to Germany to build some pretty awesome projects before joining TransferWise in the London office overseeing the currencies and banking engineering in the EU region. So first of all, a small poll. How many of you know what is TransferWise? All right. How many of you work in companies that are more than 500 people? OK. And how many of you work in companies that are very small, less than 50 people? OK. So TransferWise is a money transfer platform. We send money around the world, and we do it better than the traditional banks. We're famous for our Estonian founders, one of which, Taavet, was Skype's, also an Estonian company, first employee. But most importantly, we are famous for our evangelical customers that tell their friends about us and drive our growth. A little bit of stats. Stats are fun. Currently, we send more than $1 billion in transfers per month. And we save our customers more than $50 million per month compared to using their own bank. We have 650 currency routes, 150 of which added this year. And yes, we do support sending money to Ukraine, completely legally, compliant to all local regulations, almost from anywhere in the world. How do we do that? Essentially, TransferWise owns a bunch of bank accounts. In each of the countries where we operate, we have a local bank account. If I want to send £1,000 to my euro bank account from London, what I need to do is I'll just do a local transfer and pay in the money to our British UK account. We will convert it using the rate you see in Google, XE, Reuters, you name it. We don't have any markup on the rate. And we'll pay it out from our European account. As you can see, money actually never crosses any borders. The only thing that's tying up the money is our platform. And it is a very simple idea, which leads us to the thought that a normal bank that has operations around the world could have started TransferWise at any point in time in the last 100 years. But they didn't. Why? Because banks are greedy. They're used to make money out of thin air, and they have no intention in changing this. But the thing is that the whole world's financial system is built on trust. And the banking industry is so old that inherently, we think that banks are trustworthy. This changed in the last decade a little bit. But right now, if you want to start a financial technology company, the only way to achieve advocacy for your product is to build an order of magnitude better product than any alternative that is there. If you'll be 10% cheaper than a bank, nobody will use you. You can only do that if you work extremely hard and you really believe in what you do. And as a result, only believers give their customers stories to tell. At some point in time, we were a young startup, so we had some controversial ads, did some stripping in central London. But as we grew older and built a better product, we have other stories to tell now. Sending money from euro to GBP in 27 seconds, it's reality right now. Because essentially a money transfer is one record in one database and another in another. It should be nearly instant. Or Deutsche Bank calling our customers asking, what is this thing called TransferWise that you send money to constantly? How do we do it? We try to use an emerging way of building products. We're not the only company that does that. There are pretty amazing companies that do that as well, like Airbnb, Spotify, Valve. We all work in autonomous, independent teams that focus on KPIs that most importantly make a difference to our customers and thus drive our growth. Let's go through the terms here. autonomous means that any team that is focused on some business task needs to have all the skill sets in their team. If a team needs a designer, just hire one. I work in currencies and banking. I know nothing about banking. That's why we have a banker that is very, very deep driven into the banking industry. And he does the relationship management. How does this translate into our engineering culture? We practice weak code ownership, which means that any piece of the code is owned by a team. But any team can change any part of the code, which means that, yeah, we do use pull requests. And you think, why would other team spend their time to review your pull requests? Well, if you make change in other team services, pieces of code, you will probably make stuff better for them too, without them doing any of the work. And it works fine, because we all engineer for customer impact. Our engineers are product engineers. We get close to our customers and make decisions both on quantitative data, which means statistics and measurements and modeling, and qualitative data, like answering CS calls. In fact, it is your job to talk to your customer. One of our founders, Christo, made a challenge the other day and said that, yeah, if the engineer takes some CS calls or answers emails, he will bake a cake for him. There were quite a lot of volunteers, so in a couple of weeks later, he had to cook us all a huge dinner. How did our tech stack evolve over time? Obviously, when you think about money transfer, the technology behind this is pretty legacy, and it's pretty big. It's been evolving a lot. That's why what the customer sees is actually 5% of the business. All the moving parts are underneath. Like every startup, we started with a monolithic application. We used Grails, God forbid. MySQL as a database. We talked to banks, third parties, whatever. And we had a very nice design back then. But the business became more complex over time as we expanded. This is our transfer state machine from a couple of months back, and it changed a lot since then. Plus, our engineering team grew more than twice in the last year. That's why we needed to introduce event-based processing into our system. This is how our system looks now. Each piece of it represents like more than a dozen different services. We use messaging a lot. Works fine. But not everything can be handled asynchronously by messaging. Some services in your system, by definition, need to be highly responsible, highly synchronous, and scale really well. To give you an example, when you go to our front page, you see a rate from euro to GBP. And the rate changes in real time as the markets change. It is not our intent to use a rate that is different from the real mid-market rate. This means that we need to fetch and serve, both for our internal systems and to our customers, the rate in real time. And since there are a lot of transfers, it is a pretty heavy load on this one service. To manage these services, we need a couple of things. Essentially, we need automatic allocation of instances. We need automatic provisioning, obviously, whatever tool you use, logging and monitoring. And what is most important, we don't want any engineers actually thinking about it. This is where service discovery can help as a good mechanism to handle a bunch of services. We have a couple of hundreds of them already. This is how we use service discovery in TransferWise. Essentially, we use client-side load balancing where we can. We use the self-registration pattern, all pretty standard. But the question is, like, if you want to introduce service discovery into our platform, there are more than 120 engineers in the team. And since we're autonomous and independent, there will be no boss, no architect, no engineering manager that will go to the teams and say, hey, you're doing discovery tomorrow. So the only answer to this is that the person who will do it is you, and you personally, by your own belief and your own judgment that the engineering team needs it. But first, before actually building anything, you do a research and you share your stuff with your colleagues. We reviewed a bunch of solutions on the market. There are a bunch. Some of them pretty good, like Airbnb Smart Stack or HashiCorp's Console, awesome solution. We had a couple of constraints that are system-specific. We need to be AP in terms of the CAP theorem, which means we prefer availability over consistency when not regarding money, but when you share network addresses in your network. We need multi-data support because we have a bunch of data centers. We need multilingual support because we have a pretty diverse stack. And what is important, our system is highly moving. There are a lot of moving parts. That's why we need a network update time within a data center under 3 seconds. To give you an example, Netflix has an SLA of 2 minutes of updating the network map. But first, you started with a proof of concept of once you're good. How do you do a proof of concept? There is no way you can adopt a technology over hundreds of services overnight because, well, we need to deliver products. That's why the first thing, you don't build a car right away. You start with a skateboard, then go move on to a bike, and then hopefully, in the distant future, you will build a car. So our proof of concept was, like we still have the monolith, that the monolith needs to be able to consume one service in production. And then, when you build an open one, you cover all possible use cases, which are 3 in our system, which is monolith to service, service to service, and service to monolith. But then comes the heavy part, which is adoption. How do you make engineers that have no bosses adopt your technology? The only way you can do it is to actually inspire people and make them understand that they need them themselves. And then all the specific teams can adopt the technology themselves because you've already built good examples. You have built some stuff. Now they can continue doing the work. How do you do that? First of all, you need to be visible and provide team support, face-to-face meetings, travel if you need to, answer any questions that are there. You need to do weekly updates, or even more often. You need to feed people news, just because people are only willing to contribute to something that is moving. Nobody wants to contribute into legacy. Nobody wants to evolve something that is dead. Of course, you need to build a detailed onboarding guide because, yeah, people do not like to learn. And you need to spread the ownership and share your knowledge as much as you can just because, well, you may go to a vacation or be sick or leave the company. The more people know about this, the better. Currently, after 3 weeks in production, we have 15 services already up and running. 20 more are in the test environment, still in the making. We have some pretty cool stuff unlocked thanks to service discovery, like circuit breaking, hystrix. We're able to store configurations in a distributed manner. It simplified our development operations a little bit. And all of this was done by 2 engineers in a couple of weeks' time. TransferWise is trusted around the world, all over the world. We currently are able to send money to 90% of all the world's bank accounts. We have 8 offices around the world, starting from New York, Tampa, London, Budapest, Tallinn, Tokyo, Singapore, and most importantly, our beloved Cherkasy office, because this is where the first line of code was written. Our first engineer, Bogdan, is still with us, which is remarkable, because what we do is we change the money transfer industry. This is not just a job that you do 9 to 6. This is a revolution. That's why I would like to invite you to build this with us. We're constantly hiring all around the world. Onwards. Thank you.